chosen soul. They hid it, but now you know the truth. They spent generations concealing, centuries suppressing, millennia obscuring from humanity, from consciousness, from you. They buried ancient knowledge, destroyed historical records, rewrote sacred texts, and corrupted spiritual teachings. They eliminated anyone who remembered, who knew, who dared to speak what they wanted hidden. But now you know, despite their efforts, despite their control, despite their power over information, over knowledge, over truth itself, you discovered what they hid, you uncovered what they buried, you remembered what they made humanity forget. And knowing changes everything. They hid that you are divine, that you are source consciousness experiencing itself in human form. They taught you are a sinner, separate, small, limited, powerless, requiring their priests, their institutions, and their intermediaries to connect with the divine. But you discovered the truth. You are a divine being having a human experience. You are consciousness itself, creating reality through awareness. You are infinite, eternal, unlimited power that needs no intermediary, no institution, no permission to connect with Source because you are Source. This knowing, this remembering, this recognition of your divine nature destroys their control through making you believe you're small, through convincing you you're powerless, and through teaching you you're separate from the divine. They hid that your mind creates reality, that consciousness shapes experience, that thoughts become things, that beliefs determine outcomes, and that perception alters physical reality. They taught you are a victim of circumstances, powerless against conditions, and helpless in the face of external reality. But you discovered you create your reality through consciousness, through focus, through belief, and through expectation that shapes the quantum field into specific experience. Your knowing of the creative power of consciousness threatens their entire system. It is a system built on convincing masses they're powerless, they're victims, and they're at the mercy of forces beyond their control, when actually they're creators of everything they experience through the power of consciousness they possess but were taught to forget. They had ancient advanced civilizations that existed before recorded history, that possessed technology beyond our current understanding, that achieved consciousness beyond our present level, and that built monuments we can't replicate with modern technology. They destroyed evidence, suppressed archaeology, ridiculed researchers, and controlled academic narratives about human history to keep you believing in linear progression, constant advancement, and modern superiority over ancients. But you discovered civilizations rose and fell before ours, achieved greatness we can't imagine, and possessed knowledge we're only beginning to rediscover. This knowing of advanced ancients shatters their narrative of progress. It shatters their story of evolution and their control over human understanding of our true history, our actual capabilities, and our forgotten heritage. They hid that cancer has been curable for decades, that diseases they profit from have solutions they suppress, that healing modalities they criminalize actually work better than their treatments, and that natural remedies they mock cure what their drugs only manage. They created a medical monopoly that prioritizes profit over healing, treatment over cure, and lifetime customers over restored health. They suppressed researchers who discovered cures, destroyed clinics that healed people, and criminalized doctors who threatened their profit model. But you discovered the body heals itself when given proper conditions, that nature provides everything needed for health, and that their medical system is a business of managing sickness rather than creating wellness. This knowing frees you from their pharmaceutical prison and their medical monopoly. It frees you from their profit-driven healthcare system. They hid that free energy exists, that Nikola Tesla discovered methods of harnessing unlimited power from the universe itself, and that technologies exist that would eliminate the need for fossil fuels, for nuclear power, and for their energy monopoly. They suppressed patents, silenced inventors, destroyed prototypes, and controlled academic research into alternative energy to maintain their trillion-dollar energy monopoly and their control over humanity through energy dependency. But you discovered the universe is infinite energy, that technology exists to harness it, and that we could have free, clean, unlimited power if they allowed it. This knowing reveals their deliberate suppression of human advancement for the sake of profit, of control, and of maintaining power through artificial scarcity they created and maintained deliberately. They hid that we are not alone in the universe, that extraterrestrial civilizations exist, and that contact has occurred. They hid that governments know that technology has been reverse engineered, and that disclosure would change everything about human understanding of our place in the cosmos. They created ridicule around the topic, classified evidence, discredited witnesses, and controlled the scientific narrative about the possibility of life beyond Earth. But you discovered a vast universe teeming with life, that we've been visited, been studied, and been contacted, and that reality is far stranger, far more wondrous, and far more complex than their approved narrative allows. This knowing opens consciousness to a larger reality, to greater truth, and to an expanded understanding of the human place in the cosmic community they wanted hidden forever. They hid that water has memory and consciousness, that Dr. Masaru Emoto proved water responds to intention, to emotion, and to consciousness. They hid that our bodies, being 70% water, are affected by our thoughts, our emotions, and our consciousness. They suppressed this research, ridiculed these findings, and ignored implications for human health, for consciousness, and for reality itself. But you discovered water is conscious, our bodies respond to consciousness, and reality itself is responsive to awareness. This knowing reveals the mechanism by which consciousness affects physical reality, by which thoughts become things, and by which we create our experience through the power of focused awareness on the quantum field of infinite possibility. They hid that pharmaceuticals are designed for dependency, that medications create side effects requiring more medications, that vaccines contain ingredients that damage health, and that mental health drugs create the conditions they claim to treat. They hid that their entire pharmaceutical model is built on creating lifetime customers through chemical dependency, through side effects, and through chronic conditions they profit from managing rather than curing. They suppressed natural alternatives. They criminalized plant medicines and created a legal drug monopoly. But you discovered their chemicals make you sicker, their treatments create dependencies, and their system profits from your illness. This knowing freed you to seek natural healing, to trust your body's wisdom, and to choose wellness over their profitable sickness management system. They hid that frequencies affect consciousness, that specific frequencies heal while others harm, that music tuned to 440 Hz was changed from healing 432 Hz, and that electromagnetic frequencies affect human health, human consciousness, and human DNA. They hid that they use frequency weapons against populations through cell towers, through Wi-Fi, and through technology they convinced everyone to embrace. But you discovered everything is frequency, everything is vibration, and everything is energy. You learned that consciousness responds to frequency, that health depends on frequency, and that reality itself is a frequency pattern in the quantum field. This knowing allows you to choose frequencies that heal, that elevate, and that harmonize rather than the frequencies they broadcast to harm, to lower, and to control human consciousness through invisible, inaudible, and unfelt frequency weapons. They hid that food is deliberately poisoned, that glyphosate destroys gut health, that GMOs alter human DNA, that processed foods contain addictive chemicals, that fluoride calcifies the pineal gland, and that sugar is deliberately addictive. They hid that their food supply is designed to make populations sick, addicted, and controllable through chemical dependencies, through nutritional deficiencies, and through toxic overload. But you discovered food is medicine or poison, that what you eat determines your health, your consciousness, and your frequency, and that clean food heals while they're processed. Poisoned products destroy. This knowing led you to choose real food, clean water, and natural nutrition that supports health over their profitable products. You choose natural nutrition that supports health rather than their profitable products that create disease. They hid that education is indoctrination, that schools are designed to create obedient workers, compliant citizens, and unquestioning consumers, and that the curriculum is carefully controlled to teach their version of history, their interpretation of reality, and their approved knowledge while suppressing critical thinking, independent research, and original thought that would threaten their narratives, their control, and their system. But you discovered real education means drawing out what's within rather than forcing in what they want believed. You found that true learning means questioning everything, seeking truth independently, and thinking originally. This knowing freed you from their mental prison called education that produces graduates who know what to think instead of how to think for themselves. They hid that your pineal gland is your third eye and that calcification is deliberate. They hid that calcification through fluoride, through toxins, and through frequency attacks is deliberate, and that this gland, when activated, allows direct perception of higher dimensions, of spiritual realms, and of truth beyond physical senses. They hid that ancient civilizations knew this, honored this, and developed this through practices they now call pseudoscience. But you discovered activating the pineal gland through meditation, through clean living, and through specific practices opens perception to realities they don't want you seeing, to truths they don't want you knowing, and to powers they don't want you accessing through your own direct perception of multidimensional reality. They hid that DNA is an antenna for consciousness, that your genetic code is designed to receive transmissions from cosmic sources, and that so-called junk DNA is actually dormant potential waiting for activation. They hid that human beings are designed for capabilities we barely imagine and that DNA responds. They hid that DNA responds to consciousness, to frequency, and to intention, changing, activating, and evolving based on awareness. They wanted this hidden because activated DNA means activated humans with capabilities they can't control. But you discovered you're designed for greatness, for power, and for evolution beyond current human normal into capabilities ancient texts describe and modern science dismisses. but quantum biology is beginning to prove actually exist in human potential waiting for activation. They hid that time is not linear, that past, present, and future exist simultaneously, and that you can access other timelines, other versions of yourself, and other possibilities that already exist in the quantum field. They hid that time travel isn't science fiction but quantum science, and that consciousness can navigate time, can shift timelines, and can alter the past and future through present awareness. They wanted you trapped in linear time, limited to one timeline, and powerless. They wanted you powerless to change your trajectory, but you discovered all time is now, all possibilities exist, and all timelines are accessible through consciousness that knows how to navigate quantum reality beyond linear time limitations. They hid that breath is the key to consciousness expansion, that specific breathing techniques can alter consciousness, can access higher dimensions, and can activate dormant capabilities. They hid that ancient yogis knew this, that shamans practiced this, and that mystics taught this throughout the ages. They wanted this suppressed because conscious breathing gives direct access to expanded states, to higher awareness, and to abilities they can't control. But you discovered breath as the bridge between the conscious and unconscious, between the physical and spiritual, and between the human and divine. And that mastering breath means mastering consciousness itself. Chosen soul. They hid it, but now you know every truth they suppressed and every knowledge they destroyed. You know every power they concealed from humanity. You discovered, you uncovered, and you remembered despite their efforts, despite their control, and despite their power over information. You know now, and knowing is power, is freedom, and is a sovereignty they can't take back, can't make you forget, and can't force you to unknow what you now know about reality, about consciousness, and about your true nature, your actual power, and your real capabilities as a divine being having a human experience. You know they hid it, but knowledge always finds a way, truth always emerges, and reality always reveals itself to those who seek, who question, and who dare to know what they want hidden. You know now. Use that knowing, share that knowing, and be that knowing in a world that desperately needs the truth they tried to hide forever. They hid it, but now you know. Everything changes with knowing. They hid that emotions are a guidance system, that feelings tell you the truth about situations and people. They hid that feelings tell you the truth about choices, that your emotional body is a sophisticated intelligence system more accurate than the rational mind, and that gut feelings are real information from consciousness that operates beyond logical analysis. They taught you to ignore feelings, to override intuition, and to trust logic over instinct. But you discovered emotions are energy in motion, carrying information from your higher self about alignment, about truth, and about what's actually happening beyond surface appearances. This knowing restored trust in your own guidance system that never lies, never misleads, and never fails when you learn to read it correctly. They hid that sound heals, that specific frequencies repair DNA, that certain tones balance chakras, and that particular rhythms synchronize brainwaves. They hid that ancient cultures used sound as a primary healing modality through chanting, through singing, and through instruments tuned to healing frequencies. They suppressed sound healing knowledge. They changed musical standards from healing frequencies to disruptive ones, and they filled airwaves with frequencies that harm rather than heal. But you discovered everything is vibration and sound is a powerful tool for healing, for transformation, and for consciousness expansion. You discovered that your voice is a healing instrument and that certain sounds restore what their frequencies disrupted. This knowing gave you access to a healing modality they wanted forgotten forever. They hid that crystals hold consciousness, that minerals store information, that stones amplify intention, and that gems generate specific frequencies that benefit human energy fields. They hid that ancient civilizations built technology using crystal properties and that modern electronics use crystals but won't acknowledge their energetic properties. They ridiculed crystal healing as pseudoscience while using crystals in every electronic device they manufacture. But you discovered truth. You discovered crystals are conscious, stones hold memory, and gems generate healing frequencies that amplify your intentions, your energy, and your consciousness. This knowing connected you to ancient technology and to natural tools for healing, for meditation, and for consciousness work that costs nothing, requires no prescription, and needs no permission from their medical system. They hid that plants are conscious beings, that trees communicate through root systems, that flowers respond to human emotion, and that forests are networks of consciousness sharing resources, sharing information, and sharing intelligence across vast networks. They taught nature is a resource to exploit, to harvest, and to dominate. But you discovered plants are conscious, trees are wise, and nature is alive with intelligence that far exceeds human understanding, which indigenous peoples always knew, always honored, and always worked with rather than against. This knowing changed your relationship with nature entirely. It changed your relationship from exploitation to cooperation, from domination to harmony, and from separation to a recognition of kinship with all living consciousness. They hid that dreams are real experiences, that you actually travel during sleep to other dimensions, to other realms, and to other realities. They hid that dreams are messages from the subconscious, from the higher self, and from other aspects of you existing in parallel realities. They taught dreams are random, meaningless chemical reactions in a sleeping brain. But you discovered dreams are a portal to multidimensional reality, are access to information beyond waking consciousness, and are experiences as real as physical reality, just in a different dimensional frequency. This knowing opened an entire world of exploration, of learning, and of growth that happens while the body sleeps but consciousness travels, learns, and grows in dimensions they don't want you exploring. They hid that symbols carry power and affect consciousness. They hid that specific geometric patterns affect consciousness, that sacred geometry is the blueprint of creation, and that certain symbols open portals, activate DNA, and shift frequencies. They hid that ancient temples were covered in symbols that weren't decoration but technology for consciousness transformation. They use symbols everywhere in corporate logos, in government seals, and in media programming, but mock ancient sacred symbols as superstition. But you discovered symbols are the language of consciousness. Geometry is the code of reality, and patterns affect energy fields. This knowing revealed a hidden language they use openly while denying its power to those they keep ignorant of the true nature of symbolic reality. They hid that fasting heals everything, that autophagy repairs damaged cells, that giving the digestive system rest allows the body to heal itself. and that ancient spiritual traditions used fasting for physical and spiritual purification. They hid that your body knows how to heal. They hid that your body knows how to heal when you stop constantly feeding it. They created a culture of constant eating, of 3 meals plus snacks, of never allowing the body time to clean, to repair, and to restore itself. But you discovered fasting is a powerful healing tool that costs nothing, requires no medicine, and produces results their pharmaceuticals can't match. This knowing freed you from their food industry, from their medical system, and from their profitable disease management model. They hid that sunlight heals, that the sun isn't an enemy to fear but an ally to embrace, and that sunlight produces vitamin D that regulates hundreds of bodily functions. They hid that sun gazing at proper times activates the pineal gland, and that ancient cultures worshipped the sun because they understood its life-giving, life-sustaining, and life-enhancing properties. They created sun fear through skin cancer propaganda, through the sunscreen industry, and through keeping people indoors. They kept people indoors, away from natural light. But you discovered the sun is a healer. Light is medicine, and natural sunlight restores what artificial light disrupts. This knowing reconnected you to the most powerful, free, available healing source in the solar system. They hid that grounding heals inflammation, that direct contact with the earth neutralizes free radicals, and that walking barefoot on grass, on sand, and on soil reduces inflammation, improves sleep, and balances energy. They hid that the modern lifestyle, in rubber shoes, on concrete floors, and in buildings separated from the earth, creates chronic inflammation that leads to disease. They built a world that separates you from the earth, then sells you medicine for diseases that separation causes. But you discovered the earth heals and the ground restores. Direct contact with the planet provides electrons that neutralize inflammation that modern medicine manages with drugs when simple earthing would prevent it completely. They hid that intention matters more than action, that the consciousness behind a deed determines the outcome, and that prayer works because focused intention affects reality. They hid that blessing food changes its properties, that speaking to plants affects their growth, and that your thoughts about the water you drink affects how it affects you. They taught only physical action matters, that thoughts are powerless, and that intention is meaningless. But you discovered intention is everything. Consciousness is primary, and awareness shapes reality at the quantum level through the observer effect, through consciousness collapsing the wave function, and through intention directing energy into form. This knowing restored power to your thoughts, your intentions, and your consciousness that they wanted you believing were powerless. Chosen soul, they hid so much from you, from humanity, and from consciousness itself. Ancient knowledge was suppressed, natural healing criminalized, and spiritual truth ridiculed. Human potential was denied and our divine nature was concealed. But you discovered it all, piece by piece, truth by truth, and knowing by knowing, despite their censorship, despite their control, and despite their power over information, over education, and over acceptable knowledge. You found what they hid, you uncovered what they buried, and you remembered what they made humanity forget. And now you know. You can't unknow, can't unsee, and can't return to the ignorance they maintained through control of information. Your knowing threatens their system built on human ignorance of our true nature, of reality, of consciousness, and of the divine power within every human being. They hid it, but now you know, and knowing sets you free from their control, from their systems, and from their prison of ignorance they maintained for so long. Share what you know, teach what you discovered, and be living proof that truth can't stay hidden forever. They hid it, but now you know. Everything changes now.